Brother, it is so good to have you on the podcast. This is a conversation that I've been looking forward to having with you for some time, because I feel like with what you're doing right now, there is so much that not only the listener can learn from, but me myself too.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to give some wisdom.
How are you feeling? You've come all the way to London from Birmingham for this.
I'm good. I walked into the room and it was very warm, and I was like, guys, I'm going to sweat. You need to turn the aircon on. But other than that, I'm good. Yeah.
So basically, just before we started recording, Jake was telling me that one of his things is he sweats profusely. So if you do watch this on YouTube, you're going to enjoy this for the next hour.
I have got a bit of tissue under my armpits, so don't worry too much.
What I'd love to know first off is, coming from Birmingham, how do you feel when you step foot out of that train back into the city?
It depends what I'm doing. Like if I'm coming to meet friends and stuff, I'm really relaxed. Whereas if I need to be somewhere, then I can get like a bit anxious. Like my natural environment is gym and my house and walk the dog. Whereas when I come into like a bigger environment like this, or even different things, like if I go to a nightclub or go to a bar, there is a level of anxiety which spikes up. So yeah, it's interesting to...
What's the social life like for you, though, with everything that you do? Do you feel like you've got a good balance, or do you just find complete and utter fulfillment within the gym, what you do, and just being with your partner and family?
Obviously I have friends, but I don't have any kind of like close units where I go out and drink and have that kind of social aspect. But for me, I've made the decision that this is the lifestyle that I want to live. Like I want to be the best athlete possible. I want to be waking up every day thinking, right, what am I going to do that's going to make me essentially that athlete and turn into hopefully the best Hyrox athlete, now that that's the chosen sport that I've chosen to do.
The impact that you've had in the sport of Hyrox, I mean, you're becoming quite a formidable name, I would say, globally. The hurdles that you faced and how you've come to this point, it's almost like, has that been building you up for this moment?
I guess I can go back to my story, and if people don't know, is although I played sports and was in team sports, because I had that element of being a closeted gay man, there was always kind of a level of reservement, I guess, if that's even a word.
On this podcast, brother, you can make up any
everything's
word.
A word. Yeah, I think I always had that element of kind of like taking myself away from those social environments. Like I didn't really massively like drinking. I did it at university because I was within a comfortable group of people. But even when I was like 16 to 18 and playing football in these changing rooms, I was going through such a like mental torture in a sense. Even though I was loving the football lifestyle, I then always had that kind of reservement. I didn't go out clubbing, I didn't go out drinking with these people, and I kind of probably found gym and sport as my safe place to be.
How was that whole process for you? And I mean, initially coming out, because I think you've touched on it, when playing a sport like football, that's an incredibly difficult environment for anyone.
Yeah.
Let alone finding yourself in that vulnerable position of I guess, identity and, wanting to express yourself to these individuals, because, the reality was that the reaction wasn't really what you would have hoped for.
I don't think words can even kind of put into, like, it can't describe the feelings that you go through within that situation. I think in particularly because I was in sport, I was in football, I was stereotypically masculine. So I was like, I can't possibly be gay. And now it kind of feels a little bit stupid because I am so comfortable within my own sexuality and who I am, and everyone kind of knows me as like, I don't know what people say, but the gay Hyrox person or gay athlete or however it's said between people. But like from 16 to 21, when I did come out, it kind of overconsumes you. Like, yes, I was able to distance it from me, but it's one of those, like, I couldn't even say the words. I couldn't even go on like Tinder or Grindr or go to a gay bar to even just try and experiment, because I was just like, no, it's not happening. So I think the reason why what I do now within the Hyrox space and within social media is so important is because I've been in those shoes. Like, I've been in that position and I know how difficult it is. Like, you come into London and there's like, the gay scene is quite big. It's like you'll probably, if you have a big friendship group, at least one of them is going to be gay within London. But when you strip it back and you go to a small town or a different location, or you're within the sport world, because the sport world is such a bubble, it's scary and it's very lonely. So I think that's kind of why it's so important to be talking about and doing the things that I'm doing now. And luckily I'm quite good at Hyrox, which helps.
What was the, what do you think was like the trigger for you? Like, what was the defining moment where you just decided that that was the time you were going to come out as gay?
One of my close friends took his own life. I then was meant to move out to Chicago. COVID happened. I didn't go to Chicago to go and play football, to pursue the career of football that I wanted to do, and then came home, kind of stopped playing football, mostly because of COVID and things, and was at home. The day I got back, kind of, or wasn't really going to Chicago, I actually matched with someone on Tinder, who is now my partner, Paul. And we started talking, and it enabled me to like FaceTime and talk about my feelings for like the first time ever. And then about 6 months later, after not playing football and being in that environment, kind of being a little bit isolated within the family space and kind of just dealing with it with Paul, essentially, I then was like, shit, time to come out. Because I don't even think it was like, yeah, it's so hard to describe what, like, why I didn't come out or why it was such a factor. But then once I did come to terms with it, I was like I'm all in. Like, let's embrace it. Like, let's own the fact that you're gay. And a lot of people can come out and it can be 5, 10, 15 years where they can even have the conversation with other people still. Whereas for me, I was like, right, I'm gay. That's it. Done. Like, I'm all in. So yeah, that was kind of like the defining piece, I guess, was essentially meeting Paul and feeling safe within someone's company.
What was the age gap between the two of you?
So we've got 22 years.
But do you think that was the asset that came with it? I guess with his experience and his maturity, it offers you that.
I think so. Yeah, I think
safety.
there's a few elements. It's not uncommon within same-sex couples. Like, the age gap thing, like, isn't really a thing, and it's actually quite common. Like, Tom Daly and his partner have 20 odd years between them, and they're married and have kids. So I think there's definitely a taboo around that subject in itself. And then I think another reason why I didn't come out and why it was easy for me to hide it is because I wasn't attracted to guys my own age. So at school, I didn't find anyone attractive. So the level of attraction between male and female at school was like the same. So I was like, well, I might as well just pick the female and make life easy for me. So yeah, and then obviously I think, like, him having gone through those situations and having the wisdom and life experience, and also I wasn't always, but I'm quite mature for my age in the sense that I don't go out drinking, I don't do drugs, I just wake up, train, work hard, and then go sleep. So it's quite similar in that regard.
I mean, I guess when you're kind of announcing something as big as this, there is probably some anxiety around certain individuals when revealing that.
It was so emotionally kind of a spiral that I didn't necessarily think about other things. Like, I was so tunnel visioned that I was like, right, I'm coming out. And then I've said it on a few podcasts and stories before, where like the first person I came out to was my dad. And I was on the floor for 15 minutes crying. And he asked me the question, are you dying? Like, that's the level of like emotional storage that you've got going on. And then at least like the next 10 people that I told, I also cried to them as well. After that, it became a lot easier. And then I started to kind of embrace the gay culture. Like, even for me, like, it took me not too long, but it took me a while to kind of be like under the rainbow umbrella. So you've got obviously the LGBTQ plus community, which, being from football and kind of a lot of the stuff on media you see is like overtly queer or gay, like you can see it. Whereas for me, it's like you would have to kind of ask me if I had a partner or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Like, you wouldn't be able to just tell off the bat. So for me, kind of becoming a part of that community took me a long time. And I think that's a big part of like sporty gays, essentially, is like how do we kind of bridge that gap? And we are all under that one umbrella. We've all gone through similar situations and stories, and it's like you don't even have to be gay to feel like you can fit under that umbrella. It's just creating a safe environment within sport, within life, within society, which is kind of what I've tried to do on my social media, and I think that's kind of why it's kind of turned into what it has done, because it's essentially become a safe place.
What do you think a person's biggest fear is when it comes to a person like you?
I think I'm quite approachable in all regards. I think that's the benefit, I guess, of what I have, is that if you do meet me and then I turn around and say, oh, I've got a boyfriend, it's a shock to a few people. I don't think there's a massive fear element. I think it's almost like the unknown, I guess. So it's like, but you can't be gay. And it's like, well, no, I am. like that's the biggest thing. Like I literally have to come out every day.
You know, I have cousins who are gay. I've been exposed to it from a young age. And so for me, it's just like, I just see it as love, ultimately. Like,
Yeah.
The only thing that matters to me is the values of the person, how they are around others, what they do for this world. Who they love is completely irrelevant. And I still am trying to understand to this day why something like that can enrage someone so much.
I think society as a whole is way better. Like I do think, like I've had very few instances. I've had instances, don't get me wrong, and the world isn't perfect. But I do massively think now it's being able to approach these athletes, sports people, anyone else who is gay that doesn't feel like they can come out, and it's changing their narrative as well. And it's like being a role model. Like I genuinely didn't have anyone growing up where I could look up to and be like, oh, that person's cool, or like sport, like in football and things like that. And then it's the same, like the topic that always comes up, why is there no gay footballers? And it's crazy. Like there is definitely gay footballers out there within the Premier League and the Championship and every single level. But it's just like, it's getting those essentially role models. And I'm glad that I've been able to be put on, whether it's a pedestal or a role model, or like it's hard because I've not necessarily put myself there in a way. But I take full, like I'm very proud. And that's probably, if someone asked me what's my greatest achievement, it's probably that. And being able to help, whether it's one person and now it's become thousands of people come to.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to take some exceptional people, I think, to have the strength to come out, especially in football. Because I think you've spoken about this, whether it's whether it's the referees, you know, the officials, whether it's the pundits, whether it's the players themselves, you know, they've got to be completely protected. I mean, we've seen how vicious the fan base can turn on our players. You know, 1 minute they're a hero, next minute they're a villain. And I just think the death threats, the abuse that these individuals are faced with, you know, it's almost like the game of football. It's not necessarily the matches themselves that have the greatest impact on the players' minds. It's more actually the reality of the real world and what they're faced with. Social media wasn't something that professionals were dealing with, you know, 15 years ago to the level that the players of today are. And I still don't think it's something that we can really comprehend. You know, it would be such a magical thing for somebody to just be happy and reveal who they really are to the world. But does that then become a distraction to the rest of the team because the focus primary becomes on the person's sexuality? And so do some players start to resent that individual when that individual really doesn't want the focus? They just want to be themselves.
Yeah, like it goes across multiple different countries as well, where like the cultural differences are so vast. Like it's literally illegal to be gay, and I don't know the number of countries, but it's a lot. Like you could go to prison. As a society, I wouldn't say that we've got like soft. I'd say that I think a lot of it's correct, but I also think like it's good to have jokes, and it's good to kind of embrace humor in a way. So I think we need to also like not go back in any means, but I think it's like it's hard because you might say something that it literally 5-10 years ago wasn't even a thing, and it's only for the right reasons. But it's as you touching back to what you said on earlier, it's like it's a time thing and it's an education point of view. Like my mum didn't find it that easy me coming out, but I said to her, I was like, look, I'll give you time, but if I don't see any progress, then like I will just, like I'm old enough, have enough money, can just go and do my own thing. Like I don't need you guys anymore, but I want you. So I think that's like time is a big thing, as you said earlier.
How did the team that you were playing with at that time take the news?
So I had two teams essentially. I had my team at home, which is where like mum and dad were from, and then I had kind of partly moved up to Birmingham. So I did a early doors. I live in a pretty small town, so news travels fast. But the guy who ran the team, his name's George, and we're really close. I'd only told like a handful of people, but his sister's friends with someone, blah, 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 blah. He called me and said, hi, mate, like, heard the news, literally just want to, basically just had a chat just to see if I was all right. Two, said, one, if anything happens in the changing room or around the football pitch or things like that, let me know. And then just a few other things, basically being like, look, I've got your back. Which at that time, as I said, like literally like the first 10 people I told, I was crying. So to have that kind of support from those types of people was massive. Like people that you look up to, like he's probably, he's going to tell me off, 10 years older than me, a bit less. But we went through all the school systems together. Like he's friends with my like brothers and things like that. So to have him call you and be like, blah, blah, blah. And then I had the complete polar opposite reaction. So I was playing for a team up in Birmingham on a Sunday. And this was a little bit later on, actually. And I'd just done a podcast for the BBC talking about being gay in football, but also just in sport in general, a little bit like we are now, just in terms of like having quite a candid conversation. And it was the first kind of media piece I'd done. It was a bit crazy, to be honest. And then no one said anything, but we were in the group chat, and I texted the manager being like, "Oh, hi mate, I can play on the weekend." And I was just it was literally just Sunday football. Like it was bang average standard at best. And I played a few games. I'm pretty sure I was captain like the week before because they were like, "Oh my God, this guy's amazing." And then the team sheet got put out and I wasn't on it. And I was like, okay, a bit weird. Literally, like it was like so like the timeline was like bang on. Like the podcast came out and then I can't remember exactly what happened. I think I probably texted the guy and then was just literally no reply, and then was removed from said group chat. And then I still didn't know at the time whether like that was the reason. Like I was pretty sure, but I wasn't 100%. And then about 3 months later, I bumped into a girl who was like kind of in and around the club, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm really sorry about what happened." And I was like, "What the hell?" Like so, but that kind of was.
And have you spoken to that manager or seen those players since that happened?
No.
So that basically was just a little that.
So I didn't really lose. Like I was upset, obviously, but I didn't lose sleep over it. I was like, okay, that's, as you said earlier, it's kind of like their problem essentially.
But what do you think? What do you think the issue with that actually is? Is there a fear, I guess, of having a gay man within the changing room that these men?
We didn't even like have a changing room because it was like Sunday football. Like people rocked up literally like 5 minutes before the game even started.
So it was just proper pitch sides.
Literally, like you literally walk up, your shin pads aren't even on. Like literally, like literally.
Wow.
There's maybe a stand at one of the grounds or something. So it was just bizarre, mate. I was like, I didn't really want to talk about it for ages because I was just like, it's not really like. But then I like the more I think about it, I'm like, that actually happened. Like it is kind of crazy. Like if it was a Saturday team or anything else, then like you could easily get like the FA involved and it would be almost like a lawsuit essentially. But I think I was because I was still quite new to being out. It was only like a year in. I had my own stuff to deal with, and I was like, I kind of just brushed it under the rug and went and played somewhere else. And I did almost use it as fuel to be a little bit more active within society and within social media and talk about things a little bit more. I was kind of lucky in a sense. So I did tweet about it, and it didn't go like crazy, but a few people messaged, and then a guy from Sky texted me and was like, "Oh, I'm doing a media piece. I'd love to just have a conversation so I could like write a bit about it on what I'm doing." And I was like, cool, like jumped on the phone with him for 15, 20 minutes and then didn't hear anything from him for about 6 months. At this point, I was working a sales job selling lights, like literally like commercial, like Amazon shed warehouse lights. So I was like, obviously I was doing my social media stuff. I was a good athlete. I was training. I was fit and I was running fast. So my focus was always like training and gym stuff. So I was training twice a day for probably 4 hours in between working. And then, about 3 months later, whilst I was at that job, this same guy texts me and goes, "Oh, there's a championship footballer coming out, Jake Daniels, who was in the academy." He was like, "Will you come on Sky News tonight?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Just to like talk about it." And I was like, "Well, I've never really done anything like this. The only thing I've done was the BBC podcast." And he was like, "No, you'd be great." Blah blah blah. So, and then I joked with like, I call them my brothers. They're like close family friends, and they were like, "Why are they picking you?" Like out of everyone. And it was kind of like we look back now and we're like, there really is very limited representation within the gay sports world. That they called me up and said, "Will you come on Sky News?" Like the biggest sporting broadcast place in the UK, essentially. And then I did well on that essentially. And then Good Morning Britain called and I went in there the next day. And that kind of like started the spiral of what became, not even necessarily by choice, but being a gay role model. And I was like, yeah, like let's own it and run with it. And it's like, hopefully I'll go on to be the best Hyrox athlete, or whether this is my calling, who knows, but I'm putting my focus into.
Because that's what I'm interested to know is like, how did Hyrox even come into the mix?
I had a bit of a, to be fair, I actually got made redundant from that lighting job, but.
And do you know what? Bloody good thing too.
But I found out later that they did it to everyone after 6 months of probation, so I wasn't too stressed about it.
I was going to say, is that the next narrative?
But after that, I was like, right, I need to kind of. I was like, I had so much going on with my own personal and mental health, and coming out and all of that, and then I got to a point where I was like, right, I'm comfortable, like I'm happy, I can talk about things, I'm doing well on that front, but lifestyle wise and financially and that career wise, I wasn't. So I essentially packed up my bags for a month and went to Chicago to get that out of my system. I have some friends out there that own a gym, and I just went there and was like, right, I'm just going to go out there and train for a month.
And did Paul stay back in England?
You stayed back. I was like, I'm going. It was only a month. We're both adults, aren't we? Like, so I did that and kind of got that out of my system. I was like, right, I want to go back and work in a gym again, because that's where I'm happy. That's where I enjoy being within that space. So I then went and did that for essentially 9 months. And then the social media started creeping up. It went from like 5K to 10K to 18 to 20 to 25 to 30. And then someone sent me a video and was like, oh, I should do this. And it was Hyrox. And I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Like I'm too heavy to be like competitive running. And I'm like not that strong to compete in any form of lifting. So I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. At the point I was training for London Marathon. So I did London Marathon, and then I booked in for Barcelona Hyrox and went and did that. And I was like, yeah, that's a bit of me. And then ever since then, I've been full whack into Hyrox.
This week's episode is sponsored by Runner. Runner is a personalized running coaching app helping runners of all abilities train for any goal. From a first 5K to a marathon, even an ultra marathon. When the time is right for you, your plan can be created within a minute and ready to go. With each plan, Runner provides all the help a runner requires, including strength and conditioning, and you can also reach out to the team at any time via the support tab inside the app. For a 2-week free trial on any personalized running plan, use the code PHOENIX. No matter your goal, Runner is there to help you achieve it.
What do you think gives you the edge? I would just love to know, like, is there an element where it's the psychological state of each individual? Is it the physical element where genetics will play a part in that? Or is that something that can be developed over time?
For me, it was probably the running, because I train with people who are so good at running. Like they're running 13, 14, 15-minute 5Ks. So I'm always chasing their tails. And then from a lifting perspective, I was always kind of chasing the lifter's perspective. So for me, the combination was perfect. I could literally come in and be like, right, I wasn't great off the bat, and I'm still not great. I've still got 2 years, 3 years of building a base and then being like, right, I'm going to be the best. And the plan's in place, but I know that I'm not going to get the results instantly. Although I'm doing well, it's not going to be like winning world championships next year. Like I know that. I think it is just chasing those guys and always seeking to be better. And now that I'm so far into this journey, I'm not like, I've put so much work in that I'm going to put even more work in and be the best.
You're not necessarily going to earn a lot of money from Hyrox itself, but I think it's more the endorsements and the opportunities that come off the back of that.
Yeah, it's so new. But then you look at a sport like CrossFit, and I mean, again, the endorsement side is massive. I'm lucky already that I've got the endorsements that I have got, not necessarily through Hyrox, but just through like life in general. And
shout out Lululemon,
yeah,
man.
Lululemon, and I'm very blessed, and I am very grateful, and it allows me to essentially, if I wanted to, I could train as a full-time athlete through social media, which is insane. It's an interesting one. I do think the level of funding will come, but I think that will only be for the people at the top. Like the relays that I did in Nice, I got $3,000 for winning. So I got paid, professional athlete now. For me anyway, and this is a personal opinion, but if going to the gym's easy, not necessarily getting into the gym, but once you're doing a gym session, I find it personally relatively easy. Getting your 5K down to a 15-minute 5K requires 3 to 5 years. you might be lucky and you might have good genetics and you might have put a little bit of a base together, but you can't skimp on that. It's just pure hard work and grit to get to that point, and good coaching. Yes, building muscle and thing, I'm not putting that out the window, which also takes loads of years and practice, but it's an easier form because you're not in the pits, essentially. Like, I can go to the gym and do a very good session and do 3x5 or 3x10, and I don't leave it, like, it's hard to explain, but I don't leave it like I do if I'm gone and I've done a threshold session running. Like, it's very different.
So when you look at like your proportions, like you're a fairly tall male, and just like in general, your weight. I mean, there are so many factors I think that probably work in your favor, but then at the same time, height probably could be a disadvantage to a degree based on whatever movement you're doing. Yeah. The weighted lunges, I can imagine that could be quite difficult.
I think I'm lucky in a sense that I've always kind of trained in this modality. Like, I've liked running and I've liked lifting, and I sometimes did put the two together. So I had like 5 years from 16 to 21 or 16 to 20 where all I did was hypertrophy work because I wanted to look good. So my body and my physique is like almost the perfect hybrid athlete. I saw a video the other day. It was literally just like a 20-second reel or something, and it was like, you've become a hybrid athlete, but you missed out on the 5-10 years of hypertrophy bodybuilding phase. So you look like you don't look like what a hybrid athlete looks like, sort of thing. And it's true. And I was lucky that when I grew up and when I was 16, there was a good group of us. There was 10 of us or so at school, and we were like, yeah, we're going to hit the gym.
For me, it's always been like I'm going to school, because it's just been an education. You know, even to this day, you know, I brought on a new coach to just kind of, I guess, change my approach to my training to a degree, just to try and reignite my love for like a certain area of it. And I love the fact that I've been gymming now for probably 15 odd years, and some of my movements were just so fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, even my movement patterns are off though.
But I love that, because for me, that gives me hope that I can improve even more, because, you know, there are points where I feel like I'm kind of stale. And I think it's great to have that injection. And, you know, I love the fact that you were talking earlier about exposing yourself to different people. You know, I've always said, like, what I do, I'm a very average individual, but the people I surround myself with are exceptional, and that elevates my performance. And it sounds like very much that's kind of what you do. I mean, ultimately, if you want to be a runner and you want to be the best type of runner, you want to be running with people that are faster than you. Yeah. Ben Parker, who was my running coach in the beginning of this journey, is one of the most phenomenal runners I've ever run with. And he makes me want to go faster. He makes me want to go further. When it comes to my conditioning element, you know, with Nick Garcia, again, just one of the most intelligent minds that I've come across. And it just makes me excited to want to train. And I think so many people can learn from like your experiences of what they can do. I mean, I think what's great now is that you're seeing from a community aspect, classes are just absolutely packed in any gym that I've gone to that is remotely related to Hyrox, where they can learn those movements, but also build those friendships.
I'd say probably my closest friends are Hyrox related at the moment, like for sure. Like my friendship, not they don't change all the time, but life changes, doesn't it? I moved up to Birmingham and my whole life's like changed. Like I don't see my close friends on a daily basis. So you form these new friendships and relationships. I think it's a tough one because I try and be relatable in a sense that like I want people to take part in sport, and I want things like I want everyone to be able to reap the benefits, in particular the gay men within society, obviously. But I do think if you want to be the best, you have to make those sacrifices. Like I wouldn't say that I wouldn't choose Birmingham to live. Like I'm not from there originally. I'm from just north of London. I could easily come to London and be probably a lot more successful through other avenues. But I've made the sacrifices, and I wake up now and I go to the gym and I come back and I eat and then I do a bit of work and then I go back to the gym and then so I make those sacrifices. And for me, I enjoy that. Like, that's my life. It's my chosen life, and I'm lucky that I'm able to choose that. But I think it's like if you want to be and get to the top level, you have to make elements of sacrifice. There's not a single person at the top of the game who isn't making elements of sacrifice, whether it's like I'm lucky that I love my sacrifices, so I'm able to do it.
Where do you think you position yourself right now within the UK?
I'd say top 10 for sure. I think I've underachieved a little bit on a personal level. I think like the relay that I did in Nice was massive for me, from like I am good enough, because I was doubting myself a little bit. Like it's so strange because I can run faster than a lot of the people in the top 15 in the world, let alone the UK, and I can almost lift, and I can probably lift more. And I'm like, how does it not equate? But it doesn't. It's very different. So I'm just working on, rather than it being like instant wins and being like, Jake, you have to be the best now, which is very difficult to do because I want to be the best now. It's like looking at the next 3 years and being like, right, what's actually going to be the most beneficial training the next 3 years of building blocks and things like that. Like you look at Hunter, Sandy and Ronkovic, the 3 best guys in the world and James Kelly as well, they are all in their 30s. So Hunter's got 10 years on me. So like but I'm also lucky to have him in my corner where he can give me that realization that, yeah, I'm doing great, but there's more things to come, and be patient, enjoy the journey, stay the course.
Basically, Hunter McIntyre, isn't it? Yeah. He's one of Jake's good friends. So he's based in Malibu in America, and he's arguably, like you said, one of the best guys in Hyrox right now. I'd love to know, like, what do you think gives him the edge? Because I feel like America, it just has like that panache, doesn't it? And I think we had this discussion where it's almost like 2 extremes where, there's such an issue with obesity in that country, but then when it comes to the fitness element, they are exceptional.
Yeah, I think the country's a little bit, look at the politics at the moment, but it's a little, it's got a few problems in terms of where, like, even I know we both went to LA, which is kind of a different realm in itself, but it is so extortionately expensive. And that's to eat healthy or live healthy within America. It's quite difficult to do because everything is so processed. You go to any supermarket or any shop, everyone's like, you're going to choose those options if you don't have the money or the financials. So I think there is definitely 2 streams. I think I was lucky enough to go out to America and spend a month in Chicago at my friend's gym, and it's like a elite volleyball gym. So that's like their main sport. But I'm speaking to the owners, and it's like, if the parents have the money, they are putting everything into their kid to be a basketballer, a volleyballer, or whatever, track and field, whatever sport it is, their chosen field. Like, they will do everything for their children. I think that's not necessarily the difference within the UK, because I think there are some parents that would absolutely do that, but it's a completely like dog eat dog. Like,
it's an obsession, I feel like.
Yeah. So it's like they are literally putting everything into their kids to be elite. I think I don't really know Hunter's kind of background family story. I know he touches on quite a lot. He and there's another guy within Hyrox as well, went through and was in rehab and had that element of like addiction. So I think that's a big part. I think that mindset and like he's probably now addicted to training on that element, or it's, I think you have to, there's definitely a personality type to be addicted to training, to be addicted to winning. And it's like, I think that's probably what sets him apart from the rest, is just being...
Because you went out and did like a little training camp with him, didn't you? You went and stayed with him. What did you find the training was like there? Was it anything different to what you're used to, or did that give you more of an insight, I guess, into like his reality and make you kind of, I guess, process maybe your own approach to things?
He is just another level. You can't even comprehend. Like it's just, I guess it's the same with any sport. Like, you look at Messi, Ronaldo in the football world, like they're just like way above what other people can even, like Usain Bolt, for example. Think like there's always that one. And I think he is that one. I think.
Do you think the adversity has given him that edge?
I think so. And I think the pure, just hard work, like as much as you can say genetics and things like that, I think like you can't shy away from hard work. Like, what you put in is what you get out, especially on a performance-based element. I think skill's a little bit different. I think some people can just be purely gifted. Even then, you still have to put the work in. But I think on a performance-based element, sometimes it is just who puts in the most work for the longest period of time to get the results that they desire. And he's done it for 10 plus years.
Do you think there's an area that you could probably expose yourself to that could help performance?
In the running world, there is. In the running world, there is. Like, you look at Phil Seisman, you look at those guys, like the marathon runners, they're up in Leeds and they're within that community and that setup. It's definitely something that I am thinking about. I'd like to almost create my own, essentially. I don't have the financials at the moment, so if anyone wants to invest, then we can create a Hyrox hub somewhere.
Let's talk about this because I'm interested.
Yeah, so that's, I think, yeah. So even just from like a foreign country perspective and training at altitude, I think is something that's like it's 1s and 2% at this point in terms of being the best. So it does it does excite me to see where it will go in the next few years.
I always say to people, don't train excessive, train smart. Because I think there is so many gifts, gadgets, gizmos out there and views on things of like what you can do. And it's just so excessive and unnecessary. Like what actual benefit is there?
But look, if you look at Hunter's setup in America,
so basic.
It's like, well, he just chops wood essentially in his cabin. He has got a gym set up and things like that, but it's not glitz and glam. Like it's literally just running in the hills, lifting heavy weights.
I feel like nature, man. I feel like nature just has the greatest asset, because it does something to your psychological state. I just spent 24 hours in Exmoor with a group of guys, and you know, we were hiking to some pretty beautiful places, but just the change in you just being in that environment, your sleep, I think your stress, anxiety, you know, for me personally, was just reduced so much. And I just came back with such like a fire in my belly. And I think it just enabled me to be really present with what I was doing and really love it. Whereas, you know, living in London, there is so much noise going on around me. And I think just being exposed to those types of individuals, you know, the person that owned the land that we were on is just a very simple man, but is hugely successful. And, you know, does he have, you know, the most materialistic possessions to achieve what he's done? Absolutely not. It's like the bare minimum. And I just think that there's something really special about that. Whereas in, you know, London specifically, where I'm obviously based, you know, we've got everything at the end of our fingertips. But then I feel like you just focus so much on that you kind of just shy away from like the fundamental basics.
Yeah, he touches on that quite a lot. He's quite passionate. Hunter himself is quite passionate about that in terms of like animalistic, and it's almost like a zoo within London and things like that. So I think it's definitely a factor to play in terms of performance and things.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had the approach of like, when it comes to anything that I've done, any challenge, I try and reduce as many opportunities to make excuses. Because the reality is it's never going to go your way entirely. Things are always going to go wrong. You know, when people talk about nutrition and hydration, of course it would be great to drink 4 litres of water a day, and it would be great to have my electrolytes, and I need to be hitting a certain amount of protein and whatnot. But do you know what? Sometimes my stomach's not going to sit particularly well. I'm probably not going to eat what I want. And although I'd like to eat nutritious food, I'm probably going to end up with the Dominoes at the end of the day. And I just think, you know, by stripping that back, I just think that when you go into that, you know, I don't know, I feel like it solidifies me more as a person, rather than, you know, I guess gives an opportunity of breaking. And that's maybe just a different mindset to other people. That might work for you and I, it might not necessarily work for somebody else. But you can just kind of tell now with like the technology that goes on, and, you know, with Hyrox or with running, you know, people get into running and immediately they're wearing 300-pound pairs of shoes and like the best type of running gear. And I just, again, it all comes down to like the marketing side of things. So like for somebody like yourself, you know, you've just touched on there the fact that you're thinking about creating a space for people. With your background and knowledge and exposure to people like Hunter, you know, you have a real responsibility and an opportunity to create that hub to educate and support people with that mindset.
Yeah, I think like it was always like, even when I was setting up the run clubs, which I've set up and things like that, it's like, I know most run clubs in the UK are free, but running should always be free. Like everyone should have access to an element of sport and training and things like that. I think, yes, there's the super shoes and things are £300, but you can get a pair of shoes for 50 quid still. Like a pair of shoes, 50 quid, you've already got a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. You don't even need a t-shirt, just a pair of shorts. And you can get out and go for a run. And I think that sometimes as you like strip it back, just that pure element of training hard and putting in the work is way more beautiful as a story and a journey than any kind of super shoe, or I guess it's social media and we're all to blame, aren't we? I guess.
It obviously gives you an edge, right? But it's just a case of one of the best lessons I learned from my old man was like, who wants it more? And, you know, he came from poverty, he had absolutely nothing. And, you know, the school that he managed to scrape into, you know, he had to earn a living to kind of help his parents even pay for the education for him to be there at a very young, early age. And athletics was something that he was very naturally gifted at. He was really good at sprinting, really good at long jump. And all the kids kind of had like the high-tech gear, the spikes and stuff. And his parents just couldn't afford it. And so he was telling me this story how he basically had found these pins and basically put them through his black school shoes and turned them into spikes and still won that competition. And I don't know why, but that story just forever has just kind of sat with me, where the most important thing was actually the mentality of the person. It wasn't what they were wearing.
One of my favorite photos is like, I can't actually remember. I can't remember the specificity of it, but there's a person on first place and they're a bit grumpy, and there's a person on second place and they're just like literally having the best time of their life. And as much as winning is great, it's massively a mindset, and in terms of like doing, like I'll always say, like, if I don't come first, I'm not pissed off. I'm happy for the person that they've put in more work and done better, and I'll use it and I'll take it away. Like if I've performed well and I know I've worked hard and I've got to that position, then why would you not be happy?
I think it's also like the broader picture though as well, Bud, where, you know, you look at the level of impact that you're having in this world, you know, whether it's first, second or third, you're still going to make the same amount of impact. Naturally, you're going to probably make a bit more noise if you're coming first, because that tends to be where the spotlight would ordinarily be. But the nice thing is that you're being patient with the process. You're not wanting to win. It'd be great to win right now, but if you don't, the fact that you do have those years ahead of you, because I feel like with Hyrox, I don't think it's ageist. I don't think by being older necessarily that's going to make you a weaker athlete, because there are exceptional runners in their 40s. I think it's just maybe the physical element. And actually with age, I think really does come experience in terms of like the technique. I think with each competition, you're going to learn more and more. And I think for anybody that takes up Hyrox, you know, they might be listening to this right now and be inspired to want to get into it. You know, I think it's just educating yourself with that. I think you can always be better no matter how many competitions you do.
Yeah. Well, anything. I think that's also the beauty of it, isn't it? Is like there's always, whether you're at the very beginning of your journey, you're going to get those beginner gains, which is great. And it gets you really into whatever it is you choose to do, whether it's running, whether it's darts, whether it's Hyrox. But then you've also got the element which I'm kind of sitting in now, is like, how do I find those percentages to get to that next level, to get to the Elite 15, to get to the best in the world? Yes, we won the relay as a team England, but is that, I need to get to that individual point and strive for that bit.
You said, I wrote down here, because it was a line I read that you said, and I thought it was a really powerful one, where, quoting, "The difference between then and now is real happiness." What does happiness mean to you?
It's hard to explain, but if you're constantly chasing something, are you ever going to be really happy? Like if you're constantly chasing first place, once you get to first place, are you ever going to be happy? It's the same principle in terms of like when you get a gold medal at the Olympics, there's a massive low essentially after achieving that high. So it was like, what should you be chasing? Contentment or happiness? And it's like society and life is, no one knows the answer, but it's interesting to have those conversations and try and be the happiest version of yourself possible, because we all only have one shot at this life. Like yes, there's moments of sadness. Last week I was really sad after the ultra marathon. I had a massive dip. I was proper mardy, proper miserable, and I tend to be quite happy the whole time. And I was like, how am I going to shake this? How am I going to shake this? And I was in a right little rut. And I said to myself, I was like, you will come out of it. You always do. But it's like, I literally, the reason why I made and the name BTND, Better the Next Day, is because what was I going to do to make me feel both physically and mentally better in that moment then, but also over the next few days to get myself out of that rut. And I did all of those things. I worked hard. I ate well. I had some good productive meetings, which I set up. And now yesterday was like the most productive day I had in like 2 weeks. And I've literally, I woke up this morning thinking, yeah, I'm going to crush today. So I think that's what happiness is to me, is chasing and doing the things that are going to make you physically and mentally better the next day. But that's also not to say that I'm very lucky that I'm able to do that. I think there's factors and things that come to play. But if you keep chipping away and doing all of those things that you know are going to make you physically and mentally better, you will find happiness.
It's pretty powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think it's so sad to think that there are so many people that live this life that will never really feel that emotion or get to that point.
And that comes from being in a place where I wasn't fully happy through being closeted and not accepting my sexuality. And I think there's so many factors in, and it's not just a sexuality point of view, but once in particular, because that's my lived experience and my lived story, I'm able to take it from that and hopefully help other people get to that next level of kind of ripping off the bandage, essentially, because it's a big old bandage and it hurts a lot. But once you rip it off, the healing actually starts. Yeah,
because I think so many people can take strength from your journey, Jake. This, individuals that are listening to this right now, it's not even about being in a gay relationship. This is about being in a relationship and just being happy with yourself and just finding the strength to make that really tough call. Because I think too many people just accept their reality, but ultimately, if it's not a fulfilling or a happy one, as you've said, you've got one life, you really deserve it. And I just think sometimes it gets really shit before it gets great. And I think if you look at your situation, you went from being a semi-professional footballer, removed from a WhatsApp group, unjustifiably so because of your sexuality. You're hitting those low moments in life. You take the strength to come out. You're now a sponsored athlete by Lululemon, breaking world records, traveling the world, in love with a partner who is incredible. Endless opportunity. If that's not enough inspiration for a person who's listening to this to take that first step, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it sounds quite cool when you put it like that. But that's the end goal. Is it's like I've essentially helped myself. I'm happy. I'm doing the things that are going to make me happy, and I'm going to continue to do that. I'll always put myself as number one. But now it's getting to that point of being like, right, how can we inspire the next generation of athletes, but also gay athletes and beyond?
Man, that's amazing. And just your charity work, I'd love to, I'm obviously a big fan when it comes to that. Stonewall, you're an ambassador of this charity. Can you just give a bit more of an insight to individuals of what that is and what your work consists of?
I have just essentially set up my own non-for-profit, which comes off the back of BTND, the clothing line and the gym and the community, essentially. And that's going to be my baby and what I'm going to chase over the next 5 years. And it's quite nice. We're getting levels of funding and things come in now, and we're trying to build out a framework in terms of, there's a lot of places like Stonewall and other charities like Diversity Role Models, which do great work going into schools and kind of changing the narrative within schools, because obviously there's mass levels of bullying, yes, within the gay world, but obviously the trans community's just been absolutely terrorized essentially over the last few years in the media, which then also has a spiral in terms of parents, and then parents have views which go on to the kids. Story for another day, essentially. But what I want to do is start tapping into a little bit more of like the sport world, within the male sport world in particular, within like what I went through, small academies, big like Chelsea Academy, for example, or even those smaller grassroots academies, which a lot of people have set up, which are like feeder academies, and going in and having a framework and a conversation around that, and kind of letting the athletes know early doors that there are role models, there's people out there, there's support and things like that. And then essentially I want to help. We said by 2025, we'll have 5 athletes on a sponsorship basis, whether it's small sponsorship just for literally travel, accommodation, get into their sports, and it can be from grassroots up to professional.
That's amazing.
Which,
look what happens.
Yeah, I know, within probably 2.5 years now.
It's impressive, but I mean, just as we kind of come to the end of it, I mean, if somebody is listening to this right now who may relate to you in some way, what words could you have for them?
I always, and I touched on it, I always say time does heal. But you also still have to be proactive, like essentially take action on your happiness, essentially. Like it's so cliche, but you do have one shot. Like, don't waste it. Like, start to have the conversations. The biggest thing that I never did, and the first conversation I ever had, was 1 with Paul and 2 with my dad, and that was at 21, turning 22, and that's why the emotions were like insane. So I think the biggest thing I would say to anyone, in particular those that are coming out or not even coming out but aren't really sure, just start having the conversations. It's I know I say it like it's so easy to do. It's really not easy to do. But if you do listen, then even just text me, send me a voice note. I see pretty much 99% of the messages that come through. I will always reply if someone messages needing something. And if I don't reply, send me another one. I don't care. Send me 10 and I will see it. But it's start having those conversations of starting to come to terms with who you are, what your triggers, what's going to make you successful in life, but also personal aspects as well.
100%, brother. I mean, I'm so excited to see, you know, what comes of the future for you, you know, with the mindset that you have and the people that you expose yourself to. I just think so many people's lives are going to be impacted by your work. And it's a remarkable outcome to what in the beginning was a very tough story. So you should be incredibly proud of yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on to share it a little bit more.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And like I said, guys, if you are going through something, please do reach out. You've heard today what unbelievable things can come from taking that strength. Big love, and thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you, my man. Boom.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, you fatted biscuit, all I ask of you in return is that you push that subscribe button and leave a review. Unless it's a bad one, you can keep that, your sausage. Your support, though, makes such a difference to this podcast and enables it to grow and connect with even more people around the world.